Hello and welcome to Love Work Life Training Academy webinar. First of all, just want to make sure that everyone, as people start to join in, if you can hear me, if you could just drop a little note into the chat box, that'd be very much appreciated as people start to log in. So I hope everyone's had a good week and everyone's fit and healthy and enjoying the lovely sunshine that we have out there at the moment. It's beautiful, certainly in Leeds, it's beautiful at the moment. So I hope it's lovely and sunny where you are from there. So we've got quite a few people on the webinar, so we're about halfway loaded into the people loading up. So I'll just give it a couple of minutes. Whilst we're loading up, I'll give you a shout out for people who are attending. So there's people from Cordant, Hall Recruitment, Indigo Stone, Athwell Recruitment, ARV, Star, Impact, FJ Wilson, CKG Search, Cooper Lomax, Taste Hospitality, Aventus Legal, Truly Tailored, Cherry Professional, TN Recruit, Experis, Quest Recruitment, Keenan Recruit, Amicus, Charlton Morris, Micron Group, Farrington Recruitment, Crow Group, Judge Recruitment, TaylorMade. If I've missed anybody out, apologise for missing anybody out. But yeah, there's a lot of people coming in, which is really good news. So I'm glad to see that I can help so many people. Very quickly, for those who are listening, I hope you that were here last week, I hope you've got your 90-day plan sort of sorted, and we are working from there. Welcome, Heather Maxfield, sorry. Glad to hear. Didn't know you realised you were on. Sorry, going back to last week, I hope those who were on last week has managed to get their 90-day plan sorted out. I had a very lovely email from a client today who said it really challenged his mindset last week, and it's made him certainly less aggressive towards his people around him, etc., as he started to really sort of take a step back and look at his world and look at what he can do about his world. So it's a really good sort of thing that's happening with regards to helping people's mindset. So just give it another couple of minutes as people start to log in. So he's only just past the 1 o'clock mark, and then we can kick off. I will say one thing that I've sort of noticed quite a lot this week, and I think it's a note to everybody, that I go sort of out in the mornings. I either go for a run or a walk before I start work, just to sort of get myself into the mindset of where I want to be and make sure that I'm feeling sort of out there. And one thing I've noticed sort of walking around at the moment, that social distancing as it is, and I really hate that word because I think it should be called physical distance, because I think social distancing is doing exactly what it is meant to say. It is socially distancing people from each other. And what I've noticed when I'm sort of walking down the street or running around the parks that I'm in, etc., that as you're walking towards people, they're almost physically crossing the street, so they're applying by the social distancing rules, and heads down, and they're very sort of paranoid and very sort of looking very, very worried. And I've made a point of actually everybody I pass, everybody I see, having a very cheery, smiley hello and just good morning, whatever it be, to them. And what it sort of started to do, and in what it sort of really sort of made my day or set my day up properly, is you can suddenly see that fear and that worry break away and fall away, and they start to smile and say hello back. And it's really quite interesting that when they're walking up and everyone's sort of worried and living their own little world, actually a stranger just saying hello to somebody is really, really sort of quite empowering from there. So I put that to all of you. When you see someone crossing on the street, just give them a nice cheery hello, a nice welcome, etc., and see how that sort of moves people on from there. So as I said, I'll kick off now, as people are still coming in, but I'll kick off so we're not sort of too much over the hour. Okay. As we know, lockdown was extended last week, and daily we're moving into a new market or into a new work. And, consultants who are working on furlough still need to be prepared. And just as leaders are preparing themselves for the business, you as a recruiter need to sort of prepare your desk to prosper in the new norm. This course will teach you how to evaluate what's bringing you success in the past and what you need to do in order to carry on being successful. But what I want to do is then flip that into sort of the new world of working and how that comes about. So there's lots of things that we want to sort of work on, and there's lots of things we want to make sure that our desk is absolutely perfect. So the objectives that we're going to work on this week are very, very simple. There's quite a lot We're going to work on, the mountain you must climb. We're going to evaluate what you're working. And as you can see, we're going to go all the way down there. Halfway through, as you can see, I've now started to put in tips 1 to 7 from there. It was very interesting, some of the reports that we've had back and some of the stats that we get back. Everyone should receive an email after this with a little questionnaire. We've had a 98.5% success rate with people finding that this has been really, really useful from there. And I've had one email from someone who's on this webinar, and they've been on all 4 webinars, and the email came back, and the email basically said that we hadn't taught them anything, and we hadn't expanded their ability in recruitment. So I challenged myself, rather than seeing that as a negative, I saw that as a positive. So I've challenged myself to make sure that this person, by the end of this course, will have actually learned something that they won't have known before. So I can guarantee through this course, you will learn something that you've never learned before. So this is what we're going to work on. So the work that we start to move on, as we start to look at what's going on, is, I always say, the mountain that you must climb. Okay. And it's hugely important that when you first started in recruitment, and when you think back into recruitment, the things that you did when you first started off, the things that you did that made you what you are today. And so, as I said, I don't think I'm going to teach most people new things on this course, but what I'm going to do is give people a massive reminder what made you brilliant, and then I'm going to put a modern spin on that to help it. But I've also challenged myself to try make sure that we teach everybody something new. So when we first started out in recruitment and we started on that mountain, okay, what we had to look at was, the first part was the basic training and your product knowledge. If you had your basic training and you were really good at recruitment and you had base product knowledge, what it meant was that you were allowed to almost go out on your own, and you were, as a team member, you were allowed to operate 100% by yourself. You've been sort of giving your manager sort of let go of the handcuffs from you, the stabilizers on the bike, and allowed you to sort of call clients and candidates by yourself. And you started to learn. And remember, that sort of period was a very nervous period of your recruitment lifespan. And as you start to get better and more comfortable, and you start to listen what other people were doing and picking up more recruitment tips, you became a more valued member of the team. And by becoming a more valued member of the team, you started to be listened to. And because you started to be listened to, you started to feel valued. And that feeling value is very, very important, especially when we start to look about recreating the desk that we have today to the desk that we want in the future, and how we're going to look. Because once you get to that position, then you're almost into that position where you are being promoted into the next position. But what we've got to think about as we climb this mountain, what we can't afford to do is, when we come back down the mountain, once we've reached the peak, most people come back down the mountain, and they almost place themselves into a position where they believe they are already way up the second mountain. Well, actually, you need to go back to the basics and back to the bottom and retrain yourself, because things do change, and things change quite a lot. So this course is about making sure that the mountain that we're going to climb once we come out of this period, we're starting at the bottom, and we're starting with the core basics and our product knowledge, to make sure that when we get onto the phones with our clients, that we are absolutely giving them value for service, and that we feel valued as well. So I've talked about this piece over the last couple of weeks, and I just want to sort of reiterate this piece, because I think it's really important that we look at what we tell and look at what we're doing. So as I said, there's lots of new people on this course today, and there's lots of people from last week's course. This is evaluating where we're working. I want to go very much more into this, but I thought it was worth refreshing everyone's memory that in the top corner there, we have time where we spent low time invested, we've made high profit out of a client. And then at the bottom corner, we've got low time invested and low profit. And then we have high time invested and high profit. And what we want to do is make sure that we're pushing people always towards this part of the actual process here. So if we're in this part of the process here, then all of a sudden we start to really dominate what we want to do. And we start to dominate people once we get all our clients into this area here, and we start driving our clients into this area. And once we drive our clients into this area, we know who are cash cows and we know who are cash calves, but we've got to be really, really stringent about that. So let's take this to the next level that we need to sort of grow into. So on a normal course, in normal times, what I'd be saying, we need to start to grade our business and grade what goes on. And I'd say that, 4 weeks ago, you were all probably looking at your clientele, looking at the jobs that you had on, and you started to grade the jobs that you were working. And I always think it's really important that, you have a grading system for your job, so you know what is a good job and what is a poor job. And my grading system always goes from 1 to 10, 10 being it is an absolutely nailed on, retained piece of business, and it's a 100% opportunity that I am going to place that position. And that as we go down that grade, the jobs get weaker and weaker. And we should really be only looking at working on jobs which are above a score of 8. And however you create your scoring mechanism, make sure that your mechanism is really stringent and you follow it. And you follow it because what you want to be doing is giving yourself now an idea of the clients that you want to be working with. And you want to start to look at the clients that we have. So as we start to address these roles and address what's going on, we start to think about those clients that are 6 or 7, and how are we going to convert those? But we start to look at our moment in time now where jobs might be a little less, fruitful than they were in the past. We maybe haven't got as many jobs on as we've had in the past, and some people might not have any jobs at all. I think this is a great opportunity to go back and look at all the jobs that we have worked over the last 6 to 12 months, and now truly put those in a grade order of which were the best jobs and which were the best clients to actually work for, and why were they the best? Because then that starts to give you a really idea of which clients are actually wasting your time and which ones are actually being committed to you. And you can start to then understand if you're doing your process that we've talked about over the last 3 or 4 weeks of calling clients and finding out about what they're doing, etc. Then we can start to actually build a client base that is equally committed to you as you are to them. So when you start to look back over those jobs, have a look at the job to deal ratio. Have a look at your job to CV ratio. Have a look at your CV to interview ratio, and have a look at your final one is your interview to deal ratio. And if you start to think about that fully, if you then add the time it takes to fill a requirement, you're now measuring your client's worth in time, effort, and money, which means if you start to understand those clients, we can then start to see what truly our client base absolutely looks like. And once we know what our client base looks like, then we can start to focus on our clients. And as we've spoke before about the clients that we're working with, your sponsor now becomes really important, as does understanding the project plans of what your clients have with regards to recovery and what their staffing needs will be for when they come out of recovery, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months. And so understanding the budget of your client is really important, because what we want to understand is, as we sit here in the next 3 or 4 weeks and we're starting to do this planning and do this development of our business, we will then suddenly see how many buying clients you potentially actually have for when we come out of this marketplace. How many buying clients do we have actually now that are still buying that we can start to capitalize on, and we can start to see what we need to do with regards to how many prospect clients do you have. So you can start to see the development of a true pipeline by having to see the development of a pipeline and see what you're doing. What we're starting to now build is a mindset that either says, actually, I haven't got enough clients in my pipeline, or a mindset says, I've got some really good clients in my pipeline. So we've got to start to think about what we can do with these clients. So how many clients do you have requirements on now is really important. But when you're talking to clients, how many clients are telling you they're going to have requirements when the market comes back, that they're going to be first out the blocks and really, really working hard to do that. We can then start to look at how many interviews have you had with those type of clients? What's your CV to interview ratio? What's your interview to placement ratio? And what's your job to placement ratio? So again, we can now look at those clients and start to understand which clients we truly should be focusing on. And once we start to focus on them, you can now start to work out how many clients you actually need to reach the goals and targets that you've set yourself. And once we reach the goals and targets that you've set yourself, then we can start to really expand. What is our pipeline actually worth? So how many interviews per month do you need to hit those targets? But there's a big question that needs to be asked, and needs to be asked by everyone at this moment in time. And it's this question I always ask at the end of every year to my consultants when I was managing big businesses. If your biggest client stopped recruiting now, how would you replace it? And I can almost guarantee most people on this webinar, lots of their clients will have stopped recruiting. And whether they come back in the same fashion, the same mold, is really important for you to understand how they're going to come back. So do we have to replace those clients? So the question here in the old days would be, which clients will be buying from you in the next 4 weeks? We need to flip that to which clients are going to be buying from you immediately when you come out of this situation. Do you know who they are, and how much work have you done to actually build your client base and build your knowledge of what that client actually requires when you come out? So the recruitment process now becomes really important, whether it's a digital process, whether it's a video process, and what the client's attraction process is, to make sure that you have everything ready for when that client actually needs your services. There's 2 types of recruitment, 2 cycles in recruitment constantly. And I always say, if you get these cycles right, it's really easy to do recruitment. And so before, let's go 4 weeks ago, these are the things that I'd be saying to you now. So I'd be saying, okay, you either have no requirements to work on, or you have requirements to work on. If you have no requirements to work on, then usually lead generation was the big thing, your AB leads, your references, and your referrals. And then good lead conversion, your business development, your reference calls, generic calls, sellback calls, spec CV calls, all those type of calls were coming in. But really, what we should be focusing on now is this patch building. And if we can start to focus on patch building, then really it's going to be really important that this part of the recruitment process is fully understood by us, and we start to really, really understand what our market map looks like, what our permanent map looks like, what our contract map looks like, and we start to build all this area here completely. And if we can build this area here completely, then we're going to be in a really good position to move forward. Contractors, you need to know where your candidates are going to come from, but you also need to know which clients are going to have big projects, because we need to be able to start marketing candidates to our target clients quickly. If we have work on though, then we're still about taking requirements, but it's about how we can flex that requirement. What vetting procedures do we now need for our candidates? And that's going to change when we start to vet our candidates. Are they going to give us A and B leads? Are they going to give references and referrals? But are they good enough to do interview techniques? Are they good enough to interview via video? When we start to think about what we do and we start to build this, I keep talking to clients about building a new digital way of working. And that means taking a digital job specification, digital CV, digital interview, but also digital closing. If we could do all of that on video, then all of a sudden we become a whole different beast. So our shortlist becomes not just a shortlist on paper, it becomes a genuine shortlist on video, that your client can see that, and they can also see your candidate now and how much value they put in there. You can also start to look at the videos when you've come off a candidate call, and you can start to look at how much you've actually pre-closed your candidate. Are they genuinely closed, and are they genuinely committed to you? But you can also do that with the client when you come off that call, when you've taken a requirement. Are they pre-closed? Because you can watch that video back, and you can then start to really identify the areas of the sale that you're missing, the areas of the closing that you're missing that are so important when it comes to the end of the sale, that those clients might move away from there. So candidate and client feedback is really important. So flexing that spec is really important. And then making sure the interview process now is really nailed down. We always talked about before about prepping candidates for interview and pre-closing the candidate and client during that prep. But now prep takes one more stage. You know, that prep with regards to a candidate on video, especially if they're being video interviewed. What's the background look like? I've got a corporate background here. What's their background look like? You know, is it in their kitchen? Is it in their living room? Are kids running in and out, etc., etc.? It's a professional video. What are they looking like? You know, are they dressed for the video? Are they turning up in a t-shirt, etc.? So that interview prep now becomes really important. We were on a conference call, a video webinar yesterday, and one of the clients came out with an absolute brilliant point. We're now producing or introducing candidates and clients to each other via video, and a lot of video interviews are going to take place. So why don't we control the video interview process? By that, I mean that you send the links out to the candidate and the client. You go on to the start of the interview and you introduce your client and your candidate together. You then come out of the video, let them do the interview, but you track the interview and you listen to the last 10 minutes of the interview. It's going to last an hour. You log on to the last 10 minutes of it, and you can then close the interview as well. So it means you're in more control than you were before. So we need to make sure that we have that, because that means we can take instant feedback from the client. We can gain instant feedback from the candidate because they're there with you on video. So gathering your interview process and making sure that interview process is now absolutely perfect becomes a whole different ballgame and becomes a bigger customer service opportunity to, again, stop being that transactional recruiter to becoming an actual relationship recruiter. We also then talk about the pre-offer. So we could also pre-offer and get people going through that pre-offer and really work that pre-offer so we understand what's going on and whether the candidate will accept what the client wants. But now we have an opportunity to do an offer. We can close the candidate and close the client, and we can also go through the rejection phase. But what we can actually do is video that closing. If we can video that closing and we get a really good positive from the candidate and they accept, we can send that to the client. If we get a really negative and they reject the opportunity and reject the offer, and they're talking about why they reject that offer, again, this is a great opportunity to go back to your client and sell to your client the reason why they're rejecting the offer. The client can now actually see that. And I think sometimes in the past, when you've told clients that why candidates have rejected an offer of what that reason is, clients are a little bit blasé about it and don't really trust you or don't really believe you. They're now going to hear that from the horse's mouth, from the candidate's mouth themselves, on why they've rejected an offer. So all of a sudden, we become far more relational based with them, far more behavioral based with them, rather than transactional. We're now more ingrained in their recruitment process than ever before, which means your service level has to improve to make sure that you are always getting to the end of the process and the client and the candidate both feel that they have value for money. So if we create genuine purpose and genuine value for money, you'll find that you have candidates and clients for life rather than just transactional clients and candidates that come seasonally. So we're going to work really hard on that. So that then moves into the next part, our health check. Last week, you did some of this. For those people on last week's course, okay, then you'll understand what I'm talking about, and I'd be interested in you doing it. For those who hadn't, okay, this is what we're talking about on whether or not you've skilled yourself. So on the screen now is what we call the circle of recruitment. And by using the circle of recruitment, what we should be doing and what we should be thinking about is making sure that we have covered every area that we need to cover. So I want to make sure that if I have got this type of thing going on here, oh, sorry, let's just go back. Okay, let's just try and get a pen to work on here. So I know if I've got on here a circle that looks like this, and I know what's going on. And if those people who did this last week looked at their circle of recruitment, you can see that inside this circle here is the areas that make you money. And all these areas here are making you lots and lots of cash. However, these bits outside of here are starting to lose you money. So if we start to now actually properly health check our recruitment process and our ability to create business, then all of a sudden it has a knock-on effect on how you're perceived by your candidates and your clients, but how you're perceived within your business by your managers, but also it will change how you're perceived at home in your work life, because the more successful you are, the more things that you can do. So it's about what makes your world, your family's world, your client's world, and your candidate's world a better place. So if we work really hard on all of these bits on the outside here and trying to extend our reach outwards to make sure that this is a full circle all the way round, then all of a sudden you find recruitment becomes so much easier. And by doing that, we've got to make sure that we do the right things constantly over and over again. So you've got an opportunity now to evaluate by looking at all the job specs that you've done in the past and looking at your client pipeline. You can start to see where you are weak and where you are strong. And therefore, you're starting to evaluate your business so much more, but you're evaluating your skills so much more. And by evaluating your skills, it means that you can start to really improve your recruitment process. And improving your recruitment process will mean that you make more money. And at the end of the day, that's what most recruiters are in the job for. But there's a different mindset shift, a mindset shift from being that transactional recruiter to a relationship-based recruiter. And those relationship-based recruiters will really reap their rewards because they'll stay with their clients longer. They'll have better relationships with their clients and better relationships with your candidates. So how your clients work with you now and your ability to transfer your requirements into placements will tell you whether or not you've been transactional or whether you've been relationshiped. How many clients come back and reuse you will give you a real understanding of where you stand in that chain and how you can change yourself to make sure you become better. So the question is always, is your engine running to the optimum? And I always look at this in a very straightforward way, okay? I look at jobs worked and canvassing. So am I working jobs that are genuinely worth working, or should I be canvassing to find a better requirement? And that goes back to when I'm grading my jobs. So if I'm working a job and hiding behind a job that is a low grade job, then really I'm being a fool to myself. I should be canvassing to find a better job. If I know what my target market looks like, then I should be really focusing in on that target market to make sure I'm focusing in the right area. If I'm applying myself every day, I've got to apply myself that's going to be in the area of recruitment that makes me the most opportunity to make money. Now, if that's working a low qualified job that you're one of 10 recruiters working on it and that job's been out for 2 or 3 months, then you're being a fool. You'd be better off canvassing to find a better job and recruit better jobs. We're then stuck at resourcing versus lead generation. And what's the difference between resourcing and lead generation? So resourcing is actually looking for a candidate to fill a specific job. Lead generation is when you haven't got a job and you're generating information and leads that you can convert. Really, when you're running to your optimum, resourcing and lead generation is the same thing. But what generally happens when people resource is they stop lead generating because there's this huge rush to get the candidates fastest past the post. And what I'm hoping as the market comes back again, that we stop sending candidates as quickly as humanly possible. We need to be sending exactly the right candidate that is both a technical and skill match, as well as a behavioral skill match as well. So we've got to really work really hard at looking at resourcing and lead generating at the same time. And to do that, you've got to be really, really processed. And this next thing that I've sort of noticed quite heavily, it is talking about using the internet versus calling. And I could say, yes, I'm in my 50s, and to me, it's all about getting on the phone and speaking to clients. But I also understand there is a blended approach between using social media advertising, using email, using text, WhatsApp, and calling, and having a blended approach. But I genuinely state, in this current marketplace, you cannot beat having an absolute, genuine 100% conversation with your client to make sure that your clients, okay, are okay. And you're talking to them and you're understanding them. Sending them an email is just not good enough. And I was very open and honest. I got an email from a recruiter this week stating that he thought my email out to him was probably one of his worst sales emails ever. And I looked at that, and I went on and apologized that he thought that way. And I was interested about his, as I'm trying to give free training to everybody and things like that. And he responded and said, "I'm really sorry, it was a grumpy Monday morning, sorry about that." And I said, no need to apologize. He said, "But your email has suddenly gone from being quite personal to being business orientated." And I took that very much on board. And so there's a potential client of mine or a potential delegate on this webinar for free that maybe not have come on because I wasn't personally enough in that email. And when I read that email, I read it when I first wrote it and thought, that's quite personal. And when I've read it again, I can suddenly see why he thinks it's a little bit more process and a little bit more business. And I've taken that on board. So we've got to learn and listen to what our candidates and clients are saying to us. And we've got to learn what our market's saying to us all the time. So it's interesting that you can learn from these people. You can learn from your clients and you can learn from your candidates constantly. Don't accept criticism. Learn from it and learn properly to make sure that you can move forward. So the next thing is, can you build a client base, a candidate pool, resource, canvassing, and lead generation all at the same time? And the answer is yes. If you are genuinely grading everything that you do and you are working to those grades and you're compartmentalizing your day, and therefore you're working in blocks in your day where you have a block to do BD calls, a block to do recruitment processes, etc., then all of a sudden you can make sure you fit everything in every day, which means your circle of recruitment will start to expand as you're not leaving certain parts, and that means the wheels of recruitment will start to move quickly, and you've got to really work hard to do that. So to do that, you've got to plan each day, and plan each day is really important. So by planning each day, you've got to write a to-do list. And I always say, when people say I've written a to-do list, I always say, I don't swear often on these webinars, but I will say bollocks. Okay, writing a to-do list means you're just writing things that you want to do. And genuinely what happens during that to-do list, you start to prioritize it in your mind and you do the easiest things first. What I prefer to write every day is I write a success list. The things that I must succeed at, the things that I want to succeed at. By writing a success list, that means when I'm setting my goals and achieving them, I know exactly how I'm going to achieve and what I'm going to achieve. So that I don't write a to-do list, because I can know full well that if I write a to-do list, I'm not going to do 90% of that to-do list. I'm going to do certain things and they'll pull me away from one of the most important things. So I write what I want to succeed at. I then review that on an hourly basis. I want to make sure I know on an hourly basis where I am against my success criteria and what's going on. Now, I said last week, I live by 3 very simple rules. Always try and beat yesterday's performance. Always try every day to work to your absolute best, and always have fun trying to do that. By writing a success list and reviewing it hourly, I know whether I'm winning or losing, and I know how much effort I need to put in place to make sure that my day is absolutely going forward in the right direction. So quite often I book myself a meeting, and the meeting with myself, so it might be for an hour. And in that hour, I can do anything I like. I could go for a walk, I could go for a run, I could absolutely look at certain parts of my business that needs to address, but it's my hour. I turn my phone off. I turn my email off and I concentrate on my hour. I sometimes spend that hour and quite literally I'll go away somewhere nice and quiet and just sit and contemplate and think about what I need to be doing. And it helps me really clarify where I want to be going. So I want to be able to ensure that if I'm booking those meetings with myself, that I'm addressing my problems instantly. And I'm really trying to address my problems to make sure that I'm working at my optimum level constantly. So just writing a day plan isn't about having that to-do list as we most think. It is about having that success list and reviewing that success list constantly and making sure that I'm addressing problems. And what I always think about, there is two types of problems that you will come across. You'll come out the strategic problem. So what is strategically right for you and your business, okay, that's what you should be addressing. But you also get the urgent problem that you might have to address for a certain job or something like that. And you need to address that as well. And it's getting the fine balance between the two, because as a recruiter, I know what generally happens. You forget the strategic stuff like BD calls, like finding new clients, like lead generating. That is a strategy that needs to happen constantly. But because you've got a client urgently who needs candidates, you forego all that to find candidates. But during those candidates, you stop doing your genuine information that you want to get from that, your genuine lead generation, because you want to be first past the post. So I always think I've got to do the right things constantly and do them constantly. So I like to take a break. I don't take many breaks. I like to take a 5-minute break, probably once an hour, especially when I'm working at home, just to have a nice little stretch to look after myself, because I'm sat here now with doing a webinar with you. I'm a bit hunched over. I'm not there. I should really start back with my shoulders back, and making sure there. So I like a little stretch just to refresh my brain, and then I get straight back into where I want to go from it. Okay. I make notes of all my wins. And I make notes of all my wins because sometimes I might have a really good win at 7:30 in the morning, and then it comes to 6 o'clock at night, I'm still bashing away, and I think I've had a really poor day. But then I go back to my note page and look at my note page of where my wins, and I see this really good golden nugget. It puts me in a different frame of mind, that when I've reviewed my day, when it's finished, what type of day have I actually had? I know then when I'm starting to then write my to-do list for tomorrow, which is a success list, I know what I haven't done and what I should be doing. I know exactly where I'm going to focus on and the key areas that I'm going to focus on. And I always write my to-do list before I disappear. But I always like to celebrate my wins. Now, in this current marketplace, when we're all working from home, celebrating wins is really important. So now my family are now involved, and my missus is now asking me, what sort of day have you had? What sort of wins have you got? Because she's now getting into my mindset, because they're the things that I want to talk about. Okay. But I also ring my business partner daily, constantly. We're on 3 or 4 times a day on the phone with each other, talking about the wins that we've had, the things that we can improve on, and how we can get better. So we're celebrating constantly. And I suggest you do the same, and we work constantly with each other to do that. So here are the tips to get through. And for the people that can't say that, have you taught me anything different? Have you taught anything new? Okay. The titles for the tips, okay, are all in Latin. And they're all in Latin. And I've used the first one, carpe diem, because most people know what carpe diem means. Okay. So the challenge is, do you know every single Latin title that I'm going to throw up? Because I can genuinely say, if you do, then I haven't taught you anything. If you don't, then I generally taught you something. So in the last 4 weeks, okay, I said I've had that one person, and this is my challenge. This is Latin for you. However, what I want to be doing is, like, we doubt ourselves every single day, and we start that mindset rolling in by seizing the day, because that's what carpe diem actually means. It means we're going to seize the day. Okay, you've got to expect to win everything. And by expecting to win everything, you've got to focus on developing the activities that will make you money. And we talked about last week about your positive mindset and changing the language internally that you use when you talk to yourself to be positive. And I want to give you a genuine view of what that means. So I had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman called Sean Acor. Now, Sean Acor is a university lecturer at Harvard. He was a very clever lad. went to Harvard, did his doctorate at Harvard, and then stayed at Harvard and is now a lecturer at Harvard. And when I first met him and saw his speech, my question was, well, actually, you've never worked in the real world. What do you actually know about, the real world and how the real world works? So I just need to wet my whistle. And he turned around and said, okay, give me your understanding of what Harvard actually means to you. And I said, well, that's very simple. Very intelligent people. Quite a lot of them will come from a very wealthy background, very privileged to go on to Harvard. And as they leave Harvard with a Harvard degree, they'll be very, very sought after. And he said, oh, yeah, that's a very good review. And that's what most people think of Harvard. He said, if I knew that Harvard has the highest suicide rate in the universities across the world, would that make you question yourself? And I said, are you sure? He said, absolutely, it does. Think about Harvard in this way. Before the person went to Harvard, they were probably in the 1% of their school for intelligence. They were probably in the top 5% for how rich they were in that school. They were probably the most cherished person in that school because they were going to Harvard. They've now arrived at Harvard, and now 50% of them are below average. Only 1% of them are where they were before they went to Harvard, in that top 1%. Hence why lots of people can't cope. And he started to talk about how that changes people from being optimistic to pessimistic. And he talked about how that affects your ability to see opportunities. And your ability to seize the day every day is all based about how you feel and what opportunities you look for. And he did an experiment. So he took 200 people. He graded them all on how optimistic they were or how pessimistic they were and divided them into two groups. He then chose 200 stores, and in those 200 stores, he put each person outside one store and then text them all. And this was the challenge. They had to turn up to the store with just $10 in their pocket, no credit cards, nothing else. They got to the store. He texted and said, okay, your challenge is go into that store, buy something for $10, get a receipt for $10, and without doing anything that would involve theft or criminal damage, okay, you must come out with $10 as well. Now, here's a question, okay? So I'm going to ask you guys, when you think about that, do you think that is possible or not? So just in the chat, just put yes or no, whether you think that is possible, that you could take $10, walk straight into a shop, bought an item for $10, have a receipt, walk out the shop and still have $10 and a receipt for $10. Do you think it's possible? So Helen says, yes, it's possible. Kaz says, possibly. It's possible. Anybody else? Abby, she's saying yes, she thinks it's possible. Fiona's possible. Anything is, according to Helen. Anything's possible, absolutely. So people are thinking it's possible. What's interesting, I haven't heard anybody say, no, it's not possible. Depends on the shop. Very, very interesting, Victoria. It does depend on the shop. It doesn't. It depends on the person. Now, Abby's put a very interesting thing. She's walked out with a £10 voucher. You'll have a receipt for a £10 voucher, and the product is your voucher. You haven't got $10 though, Abby, have you? You still haven't got a $10 note in your pocket. So, yes, nearly there, but not quite there. What he actually did to prove how people close their mind off to actual real-life opportunities, what he did was he put a $10 note at the corner of every door. So because he put a $10 note at the corner of every door, those with the positive mindset who thought it was possible said, actually, they thought, it's got to be a trick. I've got to do it. All the pessimistic people thought, there's no way I can do this. And as the optimistic people walked in, they opened their minds to the opportunity of how can we do this? How can we do this? 90% of the people who were optimistic found the $10 and picked it up. 90% of the people who were pessimistic missed the $10. Only 10% picked it up. So it says, if you're not trying to seize your day in a most optimistic way, that you're going to miss certain things. And therefore, trying to beat yesterday's performance is really important. And beating yesterday's performance in a way that's really positive is all about your mindset. As Victoria's has just put through there, once again, it's all about mindset. Absolutely, it's all about mindset. Okay, so remember, if it can be measured, it can be improved. So everything that you do during the day, if you can measure it, you can see how you can improve it. So when you go back to your circle of recruitment, you can see how you can start to improve things, okay? And you need to know what success looks like. And what success looks like is really important, because if you can know what success looks like, you can copy it, okay? So before, when you were working in the office, you could copy successful recruiters and you could see what they were doing in order to be successful and copy it. Well, now we're all working disparately. So what we need to be doing is having more communication across the office with what's going on, who's been successful during their day, what's been doing, what have they done to be successful, and all learn from those things. Coming on webinars like this and listen to what other recruiters have been doing to be successful is so important to make sure you win and seize your day. So the next thing we start to look at is doctrine. Doctrine is the Latin for learning. And if I hadn't lost my mouse, I'd be able to move forward. Okay, and it's the Latin for learning. Okay, so you need to learn something new every day. Irrespective of whether you're working in the office or working disparately at home, you need to learn something new every day. And I always challenge myself to learn something new every day, to make sure I go away with something that I can work on and improve. So I read books. I put here, watch the rest of the videos on my academy, but yeah, it's a bit tongue in cheek. But do something daily to build your strengths. So you need to be a sponge, okay? Now, when you're away from your work colleagues and you're not looking at certain things, sometimes being a sponge is really hard because you can't listen to the best recruiters and the calls they make, and you can't copy what they do. But what you can certainly do is you can learn from your mistakes. You can listen to what other people are saying. You can learn where you are on that scale and how you can improve yourself. So mistakes are good, but only if you learn from them. And it enables you to manage your weaknesses and drive from your weaknesses. Okay? So tip 3. So in Latin, tip 3. What does that mean in tip 3? That means plan your day. So before COVID, I always say you'd never succeed if you were working 9 to 5. Now, 9 to 5 is music because you start your normal working day when you get out of bed and you have a commute to work. You now have a reasonably short commute. The commute from my shower to my back room where I have my office is about 5 to 10 steps if I really put big steps in, okay? But I can be in my office now at a steady time. So I plan my day, and I always think in the morning, I do things between 7:30 and 9 o'clock every morning. That means that when people then are at work and they would be working from an office space, I am ready to make that call. I'm ready to do those type of things. I'm now taking calls with clients at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, helping them prepare themselves for that day. Same after 7 o'clock or after 5:30, between 5:30 and 7 o'clock, I do lots of admin work at that time to make sure that I'm absolutely right. So I wrote this training program between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock to make sure that it was right from there. It didn't take away from my working day. So I make sure that I use my time that I'd normally commute to work in a more functional way. So I make sure that I allow my time to do the right things. But because I've now got more time to do things, I'm not so rushed. I'm not so busy. I'm not so stressed. So I allot my times properly to make sure I'm making myself available to my clientele 24/7, and they can call me 24/7. So I know I've got calls to make. I know, Natalie, you've sent me an email and I've got to call you back about that email, and I will call you back when I'm got the time to do that. But it's now on my success list, because that to me is a success, going back and helping Natalie with the question that she's got and delivering that back to you. So I break my days into sectors: candidate calls, recruitment calls, business development calls, administration, marketing development activities, okay? And I focus on the activities that will make me money. And this is the big thing that I want to get across. Don't waste time trying to convince the inconvincibles. And what I mean by that is, how many times have you rung clients up who will never use your service, but you carry on ringing them? How many times have you spoke to a candidate you know at some point in the past has either let you down badly, but you ring them again and you're trying to convince yourself that things are going to change and things are going to be different? They're not. So we need to convince ourselves, okay, not to call the inconvincibles, the clients that will never buy from us, the candidates that will never actually turn up for interview, but we keep trying to push them into interview. And it's ourselves that we need to convince more than ever not to do those things. So we need to make some time to make sure that we're doing the right things and we're not spending all our time trying to call the inconvincibles to trying to convince them into something that they will never take. So tip number 4. Now, we should be able to get that really from the last word because there wasn't a Latin word for technology, but it means embrace technology. So your CRM is really important, okay? Live and breathe CRM first, okay? Keep data quality high and relevant and fresh. Now, I don't know where the stat came from. I don't know how accurate the stat is, but the stat was saying in 2019, roundabout 6 to 7 of every requirement or every person placed from an advert from a job board, okay, 6 to 7 of those people were already on your database. So that means almost, 70% of the work that you are doing, you've had to go out and re-spend to get that work. You spent time to invest to get that candidate when they were already sat on your database. So you've got an opportunity now to really live and breathe your database, clean up the quality, make the quality high, make it relevant, and make it fresh. You've also got an opportunity to look at your social media. And it's interesting, I've been watching social media very pointedly over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I'm seeing the agencies that are promoting themselves in a most positive way. They're talking about what's happening in their marketplace. They're also advertising jobs, but they're not rubbing certain things into people's faces, etc. They're giving genuine value added information to your client and your candidate marketplace. But also what that's doing is attracting other recruitment agencies looking at them and going, wow, those guys are looking really good. They're doing things. So candidates will see that as well. So you've got to start to think about what you're doing on social media. You've got to use it wisely, but not solely. You've got to learn how to market yourself on social media, because I keep saying a digital wave 4 weeks ago, a digital wave was coming and you had the opportunity to swim out into the sea and ride on that digital wave. Well, COVID-19 has brought that wave right to the beach. And unless you get onto that digital market platform, you're going to be behind all your other competitors. And you won't have the opportunity to make up and catch them up because they will be so far advanced. So it's an opportunity to make first mover advantage now and really learn how to market yourself on social media and do it properly. Have an emotional attachment to your phone and video. And what I mean by that, have an emotional attachment to your phone, is pick up your phone and maximize your call sectors and either doing a calls or doing video conferences with people to make sure that your clientele in your candidate marketplace is okay. You can only create a relationship over the phone or face-to-face or via video. You can't really create a relationship via text, email, or social media posts. You have to make sure that you're talking and working with your candidate base and your client base to go through that, okay? And don't measure your overall call time. Measure the number of connect calls that you make per hour and the success achieved from those calls. And that is what makes candidates, those truly great recruiters, truly great, because they measure what they're doing that is successful and they keep repeating that constantly. So learn how to use technology, immerse yourself into technology and be an expert. Tip 5. It's very simple. Know your sums. And I'm going to very quickly go through all of these, okay? So very quickly, just driving through. So know your sums is very important, because knowing your sums means, okay, you need to know how many candidates you need to boss your marketplace. But have you got those candidates now in your marketplace? How many buying clients you need per month to make 2 placements? So you've talked about earlier on in this course about how many buying clients that you need to make a placement, okay? How many clients have you got that have got requirements that are going to come to fruition really quickly? Now you need to start thinking about hitting your targets. So how many of those clients do you need to hit your targets? And you need to develop a call plan and a strategy around that to do that. So that also means that how many CVs do you need to be sending per week? And CV now becomes a generic term for paper or video. And we need to make sure that we're sending the right candidates to the right clients constantly. And that will then generate interviews. And to me, once you start to generate interviews, you're into the opportunity to actually make true money. So how many placements do you need to hit your target or to make sure your business is profitable now becomes a real key question. And have you got the client base to actually understand that? So to do that, you need to make sure that you're measuring yourself constantly on the new clients that you bring into your business every week, the new requirements you procure from those client base every week, the number of CV sent, and the number of interviews gathered, because that will give the opportunity to make placements. And without that opportunity, you're never going to make a placement. So, again, not going to pronounce that in Latin. Didn't do Latin at my school. But it means if it can be measured, it can be improved. So what does your prospect list look like now? Once you get off this call, if you sat down and said, right, in 3 weeks' time, if they said there'll be a gradual step back to work, what does your prospect list look like now? Could you write down what my prospect list looks like, and is it going to be brilliant? Every day when I was writing my to-do lists and my success lists, the success list was very important. And what I would be writing down is a success list, and I'd write it down at the end of each evening, and I'd be looking at the clients that I wanted to convert from being a client without requirement to a client with a requirement. And if I had lots of opportunities, I'd be thinking tomorrow's going to be a brilliant day. And I'd go away with a great feeling that tomorrow's going to be brilliant. But if I just looked at a list of clients that I'd written down and jobs that I was working that were just dead-end jobs, I'd go away feeling dead inside. And that meant in the morning getting up and then rereading those things, I'd be then, if I'd done nothing to address that, again, I'd just set myself up for a dead day. So I had to be results, okay? I had to look at two types of different results. So result goals are the number of new jobs you canvass on per week, the number of CVs you send, and the number of interviews you booked. You've then got performance goals. And the performance goals are how many candidate generation calls or meetings per day did you have with candidates? Same with clients, how many business development calls did you make per day? How many client visits per week have you done? How many references taken and followed up per day? And then how many referrals were gained per day? And by doing all of these things, okay, I started to look at the right things constantly that I was doing. I had results and performance goals to achieve. And that made my success list so much more compact, so much more pointed, that meant I was going to be absolutely successful and work from there. And the final thing on tip 7, okay, was do not cut corners. And I've seen this through all my career, that if you start to cut corners, then you start to degrade your basics. And if we go back to the pyramid at the start and the mountain, know your basics, know your product really, really well. Do not compromise on the quality of your service. If you cut corners, you start to compromise on the quality of your service. And if you cut corners once, I can guarantee you'll cut corners again. And cutting corners means you will fail eventually. So you've got to make sure you provide a quality of service. And don't take the easy route just because it's quicker. Okay, I'm at the moment I'm doing a 21-day fitness challenge and we're on day 19. Okay, and I could think, oh God, it's only 2 more days to go. I could take today's fitness session, which is 400 burpees. Okay, I could take today's fitness session and thought, I don't really have to do that. Okay, but that's taking the easy route and that's compromising my own quality. So I will do tonight 400 burpees. One of my colleagues in the club is doing something for charity. He's doing the 4x4x48 challenge. That's 400 burpees every 4 hours for 48 hours. He's already raised about $2,000 for charity to do that. But that's his challenge. And he will get up every 4 hours on the hour and do those 400 burpees because he is that tuned in. So he doesn't compromise on his service, and nor will he compromise on his quality of burpee. He will make sure that they are perfect every single time. So don't work requirements without commitment. Don't submit candidates that do not match 95% of your requirement. And now you can make that so much easier by submitting videos and working from there. You can then start to think, okay, do not work requirements until you have terms and conditions agreed and signed. But to me, the big thing now, if your gut tells you it's not right, follow it up. Don't ignore it. So when you're now speaking to a client and you can feel they're not really engaged or not really committed to you, then absolutely. And Jim Roach 400 FFS is absolutely correct. But that is what the challenge is. But think by 4x4 by 48, that is, oh my God, even I'm not that mad, but there you go. So if your gut tells you there's something wrong, don't follow it up. But remember, hope isn't a strategy. And if you hope it's going to work and you hope you're going to be all right when you come out of this a period of time, okay, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening. Hope is not a strategy, okay? If it goes wrong, the first place you need to look is in the mirror, because it's you 9 times out of 10 that will have done something. So knowing what's good and what it looks like and replicating it is absolutely important. It's hugely important. So as we go through this, to conclude, okay, again, just a simple I on the end of conclusion, going to Latin, okay, we need to seize our day every single day. We need to learn little and often and make sure that we apply what we learn constantly. Without a plan, you will get lost. Technology is your friend. So if you embrace your technology, I don't care how Luddite you are or how technophobic you are, embrace yourself with technology and use it. It will be your friend in the modern world when the modern world comes, okay? Know your sums. It will help you to increase your performance. You've got an opportunity to look at your sums in the past and their focus on the areas that you can improve. And you can also look at the areas that you are brilliant at and improve those. The better you make your strengths, the better you'll be, because the strengths make you money, and the moment your weaknesses stop you making money. So know your strengths, know your weaknesses, work on both, not just one. You wouldn't go to the gym and just get onto a running machine and just hop on a running machine and hop on one leg. You'd go and you run with both legs. So you've got to work on your strengths and your weaknesses, because if it can be measured, it can be improved. Don't cut corners. And the last thing is, okay, make sure that you are constantly looking for opportunity to spread happiness across your client base, your consultant base, and your candidate base, and your friends and family, because that puts your internal barometer at happy. And if you can make yourself happy and other people happy, you will feel so much better about yourself. So that's the end of this training session. I'd like to thank you for your time. Feel free to jump into next week's session. If you've got any topics that you want covering for next week, feel free to send me topics. If you've got any questions that you want answering from this week's topic, feel free to either call me or send me an email. I had some lovely emails last week from people talking about last week's sessions and asking for more information. Feel free to do that. It's been really enjoyable giving these type of sessions. We're going to get more and more practical as we get more and more towards the comeback. And I generally think now we need to start really thinking when it comes rather than if it comes. And we need to get ourselves absolutely prepared for that. So I'd like to say, if you've got any questions, feel free to send some questions through now if you want to ask some questions now. If not, I'd like to say thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed the hour. Just wait and see if there are any questions coming through. No questions. Lots of thank yous. Thank you, guys. That's much appreciated. I hope you all have a great day. So, guys, have a great day. Stay safe. I hope you're all well, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you very much, guys. Until next week, goodbye.